with workers from the nuclear workers, the NNSA, our nuclear stockpile, and CDC workers working on the bird flu being fired by DOGE and then having to be rehired when someone realized, oh gosh, we need those people. Why is a supposedly conservative party taking such a radical and extremist and sloppy approach to this?
You have to do more with less in order to survive.
I understand. Trying to do more with less. That's reasonable. What's not reasonable is taking this chainsaw approach, which they obviously admit when they fired these people and then decided, oh, we fired the wrong people. We got to bring them back in. Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily? So,
crowd goes wild. So that was Roswell, Georgia, last night. This was a telephone town hall. Also last night, this was Republican Congresswoman Stephanie Bice of Oklahoma.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that DOGE, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically, the VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans' benefits, that's very alarming to me.
A registered Republican voter, retired active Army officer. That is the kind of reaction these members are facing, even from Republican voters in Republican districts. This was the scene in West Bend, Wisconsin, with Republican Congressman Scott Fitzgerald. Watch.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
That is a congressman coming to terms with his constituents. West Bend, Wisconsin. About an hour away in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, another Republican Congressman, Glenn Grothman, also getting an earful.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think he's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Illegal as hell.
That's illegal as hell. We are seeing this kind of thing all across the country, and it is interesting. It is Republicans having to face this from their constituents, but you're also seeing Democrats who are largely of one mind with their constituents, but they are getting pushed to fight harder. Congressman Paul Tonko is a Democrat from New York. He represents the area around Albany, New York. This week, Congressman Tonko held a town hall. You might have seen this clip going around, but if you haven't seen it, you will want to. Watch this.
I saw you on TV at NOAA. I saw you on TV at the Department of Education. What I'm saying is this. Somebody asked you what your red line was, and you said that the time is always right to go. Does that mean the red line has already been crossed? Because I think it has. If you ask us to show up, Congressman Tonko, we will show up. But it cannot be. We have to take the gloves off. We can't live for protocol. They're not playing by the rules. We have to take it through them. When I saw you at those places, I saw you next to Maxine Waters. Again, I was so proud that my representative was on the front line, right there. But I thought about Jimmy Carter, and I thought about John Lewis. And I know what John Lewis would have done. He would have gotten arrested.
Well, we're going to begin tonight with the groundswell of outrage at the dismantling of the federal government. Now, I mean, to be fair, if all you listen to is the bragging of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their MAGA-land allies on Fox, Newsmax, and CPAC, and wherever else all these people listen to things, about them talking about how great everything is going with Doge and their mission to bring a chainsaw to the federal government, you might think for a moment, well, maybe this is going well for Trump. Maybe he's delivering on his plans. Maybe people like this. But in my many, many years in politics, one of the things I've found is that there is nothing like a congressional recess where members go home to their districts to give you a very good sense of exactly how things are actually going. I mean, just ask Congressman Rich McCormick. He's a pretty run-of-the-mill Republican member. He represents a red district in Georgia, which he won by 30 points, by the way, in November. He's probably not someone you'd see making the rounds on MAGA TV every single day, pushing Trump's talking points. I don't even know, and I've lived here for a long time, that I could even pick him out of a Republican lineup. And yet, despite being relatively anonymous on the national stage and holding what seems to be a pretty safe Republican seat for Congress, Congressman McCormick was not exactly welcomed home at a town hall meeting in Roswell, Georgia last night.
You can go and yell all you want, but I can't understand 10 people, let alone 100 people at once.
Not the president. And you are doing us a disservice to set that down and not stand up for us. And
A lot of stuff will be litigated. Litigated in court. You don't think I'm going to stand up for you? Stand up. So if we're going to have a town hall, and I'm going to come and stand in front of you and take your questions and try to answer them as honestly as I can, then let's do that, okay? But if you're going to just yell at me, that's not going to be an effective town hall.
Now, multiple attendees specifically took issue with Musk's so-called chainsaw approach at Doge.
I want to say that from a conservative perspective, the approach of Doge is completely 180 degrees. They've been indiscriminate and they've taken a chainsaw to these things.
I understand trying to do more with less. That's reasonable. What's not reasonable is taking this chainsaw approach. Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily?
A lot packed in there. There was laughing as he tried to explain Elon Musk's effectiveness and power. There was booing. There was a lot of response in there, is one way to say it. But here's the larger point. I mean, similar scenes played out at Republican town halls in West Bend, Wisconsin, and Baker City, Oregon. And in some ways, it reminded me a little bit of the Tea Party protests we saw at town halls in 2009 and 2010, which was an early indicator of the Republicans sweeping Congress. Now, there's a long time before that, and there are definitely some clear differences between then and now, because the Affordable Care Act was not sending your grandma to death panels, as those Tea Party protesters claimed. And Elon Musk is actually openly boasting about what he's doing to the government that people at these town halls are mad about. But like the start of those 2009 protests, there does seem to be some real grassroots momentum here, enough that Donald Trump had to address it today.
Some members of Congress in red districts are facing pushback from voters in town halls. We know that Americans voted for you on the immigration and the economy, but these voters say they're angry and frustrated by these firings. They don't like the work of Elon Musk and these other actions. What do you say to them?
Let me just tell you that I have today the highest poll numbers I've ever had. I have today the highest poll numbers of any Republican president ever. They like the job that Elon's doing. He's doing something that a lot of people wouldn't have the courage to do. So it's actually just the opposite. We've polled it, and people are thrilled. They can't even believe it's happening. And it won't affect many people. It'll only affect the people that get caught stealing.
There is a lot packed in there. But to be clear, He's lying. I mean, these thousands of fired workers were not caught stealing. That tone is definitely one of a person who's not exactly confident in the actions of the person they are being asked to defend. And for the record, the opposite is actually true about the polls. People don't like what Musk and Trump are doing. New polls from CNN and Gallup and the Washington Post all have Trump with a negative approval rating. And as the Washington Post notes, Americans disapprove by a 2-to-1 margin of Musk shutting down federal agencies that he decides are unnecessary. And most, 63%, are concerned that his team is gaining access to sensitive personal data.
So, guys, the protest continues. The protest continues against Trump and his cronies. And again, it's not just in like blue areas, right? In some ways, this is a bit different than the first Trump term. And I'm not downplaying the significance of people in blue areas protesting. That's incredibly important. Their voices matter too, right? The protests matter whether they happen in Boston or whether they happen in Alabama. You know what I mean? But the reality is, it seems like it took more time for people in purplish and reddish areas to get mad at Trump the first term. They were mad at him in many ways by the end of his term. His failures hurt not just blue areas and purple areas, but red areas too, right? But this time it seems the anger from the places in the country that voted for Trump is so much louder and more immediate than it was the first time. The first time, it seems like it really kicked off in the areas that didn't vote for Trump because they knew he would be awful, and then he was confirmed to be awful, and the protests grew. Now, it's almost like it's kicking off everywhere at the same time, and it's not even necessarily being led by the blue areas. It's being led by Donald Trump's own side. Because, again, a lot of these regular Republicans, some of them didn't think this would happen, charitably to those people. They really felt that this Trump wasn't going to do it. They believed Trump when he said he wasn't going to do Project 2025. And some of them, less charitably to them, were like, you promised to hurt the right people and not the white people, for lack of a better term, right? And his cuts are hurting too many of the right of the white people and not the right people, the wrong people, if you will. Whatever the reason, the protests are getting bigger, and Donald is reeling.